Welcome back, and in this video we're going to take a closer look at the settings options that are available. The vast majority of things you're going to use regularly are going to be in the console, but there are some settings which can be tucked away back here in the settings tab, which obviously is available from the top menu. And we're going to go through them one by one. So first of all, there's the general settings. Now, many of these such as strobe, blinder, and flash button settings are going to be also available from the quick settings in the live console. So you do actually have them in a couple of places, but they are available also in the generic settings and under the general tab, so you can adjust them there. But there are some additional settings which are not available in the quick control. So you can enable open sound control if you want to use something like Touch OSC to create your own interface, or you can also use a bridge from some MIDI devices or DJ software to actually send data over OSC, which would actually enable you to also connect some data in that way. You have the same available settings for the blinder and the strobe as is in the quick settings, but obviously we'll just repeat here that you have you can set the strobe rate. You can also enable or disable whether you want to use dedicated strobe channels. So if you have fixtures that have dedicated strobe channels or combo channels that are usually shudder mixed with strobe, and they've been correctly set up in the fixture profile, then you can actually use the dedicated onboard strobe. So instead of the software simulating a strobe effect, it will actually use the strobe built into the fixtures. And it tries to match the frequency to that which you have specified here. Of course, every fixture can have a different strobe rate. Some are anywhere from 1 Hertz to 20, which is quite common. Some others maybe 1 to 15 Hertz, some even maybe up to 30 Hertz. For example, when you have dedicated blinder strobers, they may have a much faster strobe rate, and you might need to set up in the profile settings what is that strobe rate min max, so that it understands how to translate that to 10 Hertz, 9 Hertz, etc., depending on how many Hertz you've set the strobe setting to. You can also specify white channels only, which means that if you've got fixtures with dedicated white channels, it will strobe those channels only. Beware if you have channels fixtures which are RGB that don't have a white channel, then they will be ignored. So if you switch that on, you should expect that fixtures without a white channel will not be strobing. Strobe dimmers is basically where there is no strobing channels available, and it can actually fluctuate those RGB or W channels, or even a dimmer channel. For example, if you have a moving head with a dimmer that doesn't obviously have RGB because it's got a color wheel, you can't strobe by moving a color wheel, but you can switch the dimmer on and off quickly, and that's going to enable that. Strobe at max is basically, as it says on the tin, doesn't matter what you set the master dimmer to. It could be set to 50, 60, 70. If you enable strobe at max, it'll always strobe at full. And that's your options with the strobe settings. Next, you've got the blinder settings, and with the blinder, you can actually set a limit. So that limit will override the master dimmer when the master dimmer is higher. So if you set the limit, the blinder limit, to 100, then even if the master dimmer is set to 200, the blinder will be limited to 100. Conversely, if you set it to 255, which is the natural max of the channel, but your master dimmer is lower, then it won't go above the master dimmer. So this only overrides the master dimmer in the negative, not in the positive, if that makes sense. Mobile control, here is where you can enable the mobile web server, and also where you can find a link to that server. We'll go into that in a separate video. The footer, you can enable and disable the footer, which is in the bottom of the screen. The next time you load or click between console settings, it'll come and go. It's on by default. I think that's the best setting for it. It's very useful, and I can't really think of any good reasons to switch it off. Flash buttons, you have the same setting available in the quick controls, where you can switch the buttons from toggle to momentary, you will notice when you switch them that a dot will appear or disappear. The dot is telling you that this is a toggle. So when you will fire that, it's going to be in toggle mode. Whereas if you switch it off, it will be in momentary, and that shows you that you have to press and hold. That's going to affect the buttons in the navigation header here, and it's also going to affect the main buttons, and it will also affect the buttons which are in the mobile control, which as we will go into later. Display zooming, the default is 100%, but you can adjust this and it will change the zoom of your screen. So if you've got a different size display and you need to have it zoomed in or zoomed out, you can adjust that here. You can also do it using the shortcuts of holding the control button and pressing plus or minus, or 0 to return to default. And that gets you. You can change the size till it fits your device pretty much spot on, regardless of what size screen you're using. Next is the lock screen password. Well, this is pretty simple. You've got a lock screen here that you can access at any time by hitting Control L, or by clicking on the lock icon in the top. In my case, the password was just the default DMX password, but the first time you hit the lock button, it's going to ask you to set your own password. Better not lose it, because it's not very easy to get the software unlocked, and even if you shut it down forcibly, it will come up the next time. It really is a lock, and it's really suitable for when you're in a sort of public environment. You need to walk away from your machine and you just want to lock the screen so no one will fiddle with the settings. That's there. Enable logging is for debug logging. If you've got some sort of issues, technical issues, our support may ask you to enable that to produce some logs so you can send us the details. And that's the general settings. Next in the settings, we have some output options. So we've got the ArtNet tab, where you can actually see a list of any detected ArtNet nodes on your network. And you can also configure universes. At the moment, I've only got fixtures patched to universe 1, so I'm only seeing the first universe. If I was to add more and more fixtures into other universes, then those configs would appear here, and you'd be able to set them up in pretty much the same way. You can modify things like the port. However, I'm not aware of any device node that lets you modify it. I think the standard 6454 is pretty locked in, so there's probably no reason to change that. The frame rate, 3040 is going to be completely fine. You can always tweak it a little bit if you feel that there is some delay, but delays are more likely going to be caused by network issues, especially if you're using Wi-Fi, than they are by the frame rate. But again, it's adjustable. Streaming ACN, sACN is pretty much the same. Obviously, it doesn't have a ArtPole service built in, so there's no discovery here, but you can simply configure that and point and shoot, and that will work in exactly the same way. And then, of course, USB DMX, where you can connect various supported USB devices. And as you will add more universes, you would be able to add more devices. Obviously, you can only run one universe per USB device, so that's slightly different, where with ArtNet and sACN, you could actually have one node like we have here with 2 or 3 or even 4 universes available. That is not going to be possible with these USB devices. Some USB devices do have dual port output, for example, the Entech Pro Mark II. That is supported, and if it was available, you would see port 1 and then port 2 available in the list. This is a standard Entech Open, so it's one port and there's only one port available. And you can configure all of that from these tabs. Next comes the MIDI, and when you connect to a USB MIDI device, you'll get a list of any detected devices come up here. If it's not come up, you can hit rescan. If a device is found, then you can set that device and save it as the active device, and then you can configure that device. The settings are all per device, so they will be stored against that MIDI device's identifier. So you can set things like if it has a encoder wheel, you can use that for setting things like the master dimmer, the strobe rate, the live BPM if you want to override it, and beam speeds, which are all for overriding effect cues, and they're mostly short term. unless something else will override it. So, for example, if you override the live BPM, but you've also got some other method of updating the BPM active, it's probably going to get overwritten very quickly. Then you can set buttons for activating the strobe, blackout, blinder, freeze, fog, and effect. These always work as toggles. It doesn't matter if you set the button in the configuration or the quick configuration for the strobe or blinder as momentary versus toggles. They always work in the MIDI devices as toggles, one press on, one press off. When you press the button, there will be a small pop-up showing you what button's been pressed and what's been triggered. And to set them, it's really simple. You plug in the device, you set it, you save it, you put your cursor in the place where you want to record and touch the button that you'd like to record, and it will record that into the setting of that input. We can actually give a quick demo of that. We've got connected here a simple Akai MPD 218, and as soon as I've loaded it, you can see immediately it's populated some of the configuration because it's been recorded before. Now, when I will move the encoder, for example, you can see that it's adjusting the master dimmer, and there's a message coming up. If I hit the strobe hotkey, you can see the strobe activating and that the strobe toggled. So if I now wanted to, for example, set the freeze button, then I can simply put my cursor in there and press the button that I want to record, hit save, and now that button, when I press it, it's going to toggle the freeze. It's as simple as that. You can map all of the live toggles at the top here, strobe, blackout, blinder, etc. You can map master dimmer, strobe rate, live BPM, and BPM speed, but you can also map play cue, stop cue, play next, and play previous, which is similar to the buttons in the footer. And you can also set a dedicated binding to every one of your effect cues, whatever you've created. And the last option is you can also bind MIDI to a live edit. So if you create a live edit, you can then come in here and bind a MIDI button to it. We can test that here by pressing this button and saving it. And then when we will trigger that button, we can see that I'm toggling the mirror ball effect, and that is being controlled through the MIDI device. So that's MIDI, and you've got all of them settings available. Again, they are per device. So if you load a different device, it's going to load in the different settings, and you can set them per device. Very convenient if you've got multiple MIDI devices and you want to have them set up differently. So the next section we're going to look at is the audio, and this is where you can set up different settings for audio capture or inputting audio, real-time audio, timing, and BPM, etc. So you've got three main options. There's the Ableton Link, OS2L, and then Direct. So if we start with the Ableton Link and we enable that, we should pretty much immediately see, there we go, we can pretty much immediately see BPM start showing up because we've got a copy of Virtual DJ running in the background, and it's outputting its BPM to Ableton using the Ableton plugin. We can turn that off as we're going to now test the next method. So let's shut that down. And instead we can use OS2L. Now with Virtual DJ is pretty much one of the only apps that supports it, but if you go to the settings and look for OS2L, you should find in there the option for enabling that. And once it's enabled, it actually works really, really well. And in DMXDesktop, all you need to do is be sure that you're on the same network, enable the OS2L and save, and you should see basically immediately timing messages are coming through with the BPM. And you're going to see that very, very quickly it's also in time. So we can align the, you'll see that the note will be beating in exactly the time of the steps of the Ableton or OS2 enabled application. So that's super simple, super easy. And as soon as you will change the track to a different BPM, it's going to update. And you can see that I just flicked over to a different, there's a different view here, there you go, the different track that's at 85 BPM, and that's updated. And now if I go back to the other one, it's gonna drop over to the 153 again, and that's updated straight away, and the app is following the music. So super simple, super convenient, and very easy to set up. So we can turn that off. And then your next option is the direct audio detection, and this is going to work by the software is going to actually listen to the music, and it's going to try to capture the beat. It's not going to be as fast or accurate as using Ableton or OS12, and the simple reason for that is that playing the music out of a DJ mix or any kind of audio has the whole song, so it's got the pre-analysis. It can also analyze in advance, whereas when you're doing direct audio, what you're actually doing is analyzing music after the fact that it's been sent out. So it works very well, but obviously it's never going to be as good as doing it straight out that DJ song. So in this situation, I've enabled it, and this is a Windows device, so I've set it to the stereo mix, which is a special loopback device that you can enable in your Windows audio settings. And I'm just playing a track, and you can see it's listening. It's already picked up that it's 135 BPM, and it's adjusted the speeds, and that's basically working. But as I say, it's never going to be as accurate as OS12 or Ableton, which is getting the raw data straight out of the audio track. But if this is the only option you've got, then it's a great option, and it's really useful. And it also measures some other things like energy, which can impact the dynamic range of some of the effects. So yeah, it's there. You can also then, with this, trigger things like automatic strobing on peaks, and you can set what are the minimum thresholds, the durations, and the energy level that needs to be to trigger that. And that is something that you can then set up in one of your cues. So if you go to your cue and you edit the cue, you can enable strobe on peaks, and that will enable it for that cue. But the setting in the audio is the global setting, so if you turn that off, doesn't matter whether it's on in any of the cues. It's not gonna happen. You're not gonna get strobing where you don't expect it. So that's your main audio input options. On a Mac, it's slightly different because it doesn't really have a built-in loopback like the stereo mix, but there is some free software called Black Hole, what you can install, and then you can configure so that you can play the audio on the same laptop and feed it back in to the software. Obviously, it's also possible that you could use a microphone. However, we really would not recommend this. The noise and the sound quality is going to be poor. The accuracy is going to be very, very low, and it's not worth. It's usually not worth it. There is actually one other way of timing, and that is manually, of course. So if you're not using any of these features, then you can literally do the BPM tap and tap to the beat and set the BPM that way. But obviously that'll sit static until you then change and tap again to trigger a different BPM. But that's available. The only reason it wouldn't be available is if you've enabled one of these other options, which will then obviously supersede the manual tap. The next section is the DMX table. This is actually available in two places. It's available from the stage, but that'll be as a pop-out window. So when you click that, it'll open a separate window. But it's also available from the settings as an in-place window. And from here, you can select any of your currently active output universes, whether it be by ArtNet or sACN or USB. It doesn't matter. Whatever's active will be available here. And you can see a real-time update of the channels. This is coming straight out the driver, so what you see here is what's being sent, and it's going to be super useful for debugging and understanding maybe you've got your channels mapped in the wrong place, or maybe you've selected the wrong profile on the fixture and the profile mode, so that it's outputting channels in the wrong place. And there's a mismatch. This can be very, very helpful in debugging those issues. You can also hover over any channel and get a pop-up that'll tell you what fixture is that connected to, and you can also see the unassigned channels. So yeah, very helpful, super simple, and available from the settings. So the second to last tab here is backups. Basically, you've got a couple of options for backups at the moment. you can back up your entire database and configuration, or you can just take a snapshot of a particular stage. That can be super useful. For example, if you want to edit the stage, change a number of settings, and before you do it, you want to take a backup. And of course, you can also do a complete database. So here, we can back up the entire database. You can password protect it if you want. It's not really necessary, as it's stored in the secure cloud, and it's only accessible to you. And you just click backup, and there you go. It's already been backed up, compressed, and backed up into the cloud. This feature is only available to people with a paid license. It's not available in the free service. None of the cloud features are available in the free service. But if you do have the even the standard plan, then this is going to be available to you. With the stage backups, they're available from the stage. So whatever the active stage is, you just click backup, and it's going to send a backup to the cloud, and then you can restore either that stage. As you can see, it's now available, or your entire database. If you do restore the entire database, it's going to restore everything, all stages, all settings, all configs, everything, absolutely everything. But it will require you to restart the application. Whereas if I restore that stage that I've backed up, it's going to restore it as a new stage. So I just restored that, and it's now here, main stage, been restored at this time. And that's basically means that you can then restore it. It will never overwrite the original stage, so you can just hop between them, delete, backup, restore as much as you want, all from the backups, and that's perfectly safe. And last but not least, is your account. So this is very straightforward. You can see who you're currently logged in with, active logins. If you've got logged in on multiple machines, you'll see all of those machines available. If it was a different machine, you can actually kick that machine out, and you can see your licenses. You can revoke a license, you can apply a license, you can move them around freely. And if you've got a subscription, then you can see the subscription information. So that's basically all of the options available from the settings. There's tons of stuff in there. Some of it is specific to your currently loaded stage, such as the device configurations. They are per stage, whereas some settings like MIDI, audio, and backups and your account are global. So it doesn't matter what stage is loaded, whereas with the drivers for the universes, they are all specific to the stage. That means that you can have different setups for each different stage. So if you've got different environments with different ArtNet nodes or different devices, you can set them up per stage. And that's all available from the settings.